Yo, SitM Podcast. Welcome to another episode.
I'm one of your hosts, Uncle AK.
And I'm Reflex. How y'all feeling out there? Hey, man, I feel good. You know what I'm saying? It's Mother's Day weekend. Shout out to all the mothers. Hey, on the mothers mode. DC style. Yeah, man. Shout out to all the mothers. Happy Mother's Day from SitM Podcast. Yeah, one time for the mothers, man. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the mothers to be.
Hey,
shout out my good guy, Derek Mimba.
Hey.
Just had his baby yesterday.
Yeah.
Light skin baby.
That will cause troubles. So
baby.
That will cause troubles. But listen, hey, appreciate y'all checking this podcast out on a weekly basis. If you are a faithful listener weekly, appreciate you. If you are new to this, hit subscribe. You know, so check us out weekly. We have a new guest in the building. This episode is sponsored by Perfect Office Solution to provide office space for entrepreneurs in the DMV area. So let them know we sent you. Use promo code SITM Podcast. You get 10% off. Again, that's Perfect Office Solution, providing affordable, luxurious office space for DMV entrepreneurs. Hey, listen, man, we got a special guest in the building, bro.
Yeah, she is the vice chair of economic development for National Black United Front and host of Akata Chronicles. Please welcome Lauren Owan.
Hey,
in the Middle Podcast. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Lauren Owan.
Check me out. I've been reading too much lately.
Listen, you are the true definition of what being stuck in the middle is.
Yeah.
We were just talking about it before we went live. What does that mean to you? You know, so when you hear stuck in the middle, and you know what you represent.
When I hear stuck in the middle, just from my background, I have a Nigerian father and an African American mother, and I was raised split between basically two cultures, African American culture and African culture, and just that unique experience as far as, you know, wanting to fit in with Africans because that's what your family is and that's what your family is around, so you kind of adopt certain things from that culture, but then also with my African American friends and my African American family adopting that that culture. My mom's side has roots from Mississippi, and my dad's side we have roots from Cross River State, and so it's like I always feel like sometimes I have to choose between the two. Like, am I too African or am I too African American?
Be honest though. Growing up, say African. Being African, it really become cool to like. I would say right before Black Panther. Be honest. You was feeling the American side. You know what I'm saying? Before
No, it's funny because I would say probably my early 20s or even late teens. That's when I really started embracing my Nigerian side. But I've been going to Nigeria since I was about 16 years old. Or even my first time was actually at 6. But I've always grew up around African culture, so that was always a part of me. It was never like, I just came into. I will say that on a societal level, maybe it has been popularized by Black Panther, but I think people understand what their roots are. It's just a matter of, what does society say about being African? Because people are scared of that. There's a lot of stereotypes about being African, no matter where you're from, whether it's West Africa, South Africa, whatever. So you have to combat those stereotypes.
I like the fact that you said your dad is from Nigeria, your mom is, was born here, because a lot of questions we have for you today is tailored towards that. And as my co-host said, you're stuck in the middle and all that. But let's move on to Akata Chronicles, right?
Your podcast.
That's your podcast.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
How did you come up? I mean, why the name Akata Chronicles, and what's that all about?
It's funny. So one night I was hanging out with my girlfriends. We were just hanging out at a friend's place, and she had invited some guests over, and it was like 2-3 guys. They were from Cameroon, and
shout out 237.
It's like that.
And one of them immediately, as he sat down, he said, I can tell you Akata. And at first, because I know Akata to be an offensive word. Like, I've heard it used. I've heard it used in an offensive way. So I knew automatically that this is a guy I never met. So I took it offensively, right? But then, so on the car ride home, I just kept thinking, I'm like, what made him just call me that? And why? Like, why is being Akata wrong? Like, where did these stereotypes that Africans get about African Americans come from? And then where did the stereotypes about Africans come from? And so then that would cause me to write a Akata Girl podcast and just talk about my own experience being stuck in the middle.
You are the only host in this podcast.
I'm the only host of the podcast. No guests yet.
So you are looking to incorporate guests?
Yeah, I'm looking to incorporate guests, definitely, and looking to grow the platform and just talk about different experiences that as African and African Americans we both have. Because even if we talk about how we're separated, people want to say, "Oh, African Americans are so different. We just think so different." But honestly, when you really look at it, we do not.
Yeah.
There's so many similarities between the two.
Go ahead, man.
A lot of people, talk about starting podcasts and stuff, and for us, because we wanted guests to come on, we had to get equipment. We needed space and all that stuff. And being that you're doing it solo, talk us a little bit about the initial process from setting it up, equipment. What you thought you was going to talk about and all that.
So honestly, I started a podcast and I was like, you know what? If I say I want to do this, I'm going to do it.
Facts.
I basically just took my phone out, hopped on Anchor, and started recording. I didn't have a mic or anything. I just was in a quiet room in my house and just started talking about how I felt. Like just random, whether pop culture topics and running off of that. And that's really how I just kept going. And then, I want to be more consistent with it, of course, but as far as like just doing the work, just doing it. That's just really how I started doing it. I bought a mini podcast kit off of Amazon. Got a mic and headphones now. Hook it to my computer. Now that's what I'm doing now.
And she going global now.
Yeah, I'm going global now. Like that was a step up.
You on a break right now?
Yeah, I'm on a break right now. I graduate May 23rd.
Shut up.
Yes. Finally. So that's kind of like, now I can put my focus on, building this podcast up for real and just taking it more seriously. And that's really where I'm at with Akata Girl.
I was struggling this morning how to not to be offensive in any way, shape, or form.
I have tough skin.
How to like fit, your Akata-ness in terms of when you have African parents and then they're here, you're born here. They say you're first generation African or African American or something like that. Like, how would you call yourself?
I don't know how to call myself because it's like I'm not necessarily first generation.
But what makes somebody first generation, anyways?
Being first born here. Right?
First, I think it's being the first born here.
Bro.
My dad came to this country when he was 18 years old. He came to New York. He had the pursuit of in academia, went through this college system, got his doctorates from University of Pennsylvania.
Shout out.
So that's like that story of an African immigrant or a black immigrant period coming here and doing their best. I completely relate to that story where, you see our mothers and fathers, they came to this country, look what they built for us, kind of thing. And so you take pride in that as well. And then the same thing with my mom. My mom, she's always been a person that marches to her own drum. She's always taught me to be strong and be a leader in her own career and her own path. So it's like I pick up from both cultures and I see the good and the bad in both cultures because of them. And just that's really the basis of the podcast and just the message that I'm trying to bring to this platform of we don't have to choose. It doesn't have to be a war between us every time.
Speaking of good and bad and choosing and all that, most of our parents though, like if you go to your some parents, right, some African parents and tell them, I'm dating an Akata or an African American, think that the African be like, nah.
I've heard it. I've heard it all before. Like even when I was in Nigeria, one of my brother's friends or one of the family friends who was there, he was telling me how he was, in school in Georgia, and he's now he just graduated, looking to settle down. And I was like, oh, you didn't find anybody in Georgia? He was like, oh no, I can't marry those African American women. nah, that's not me. And he didn't know that I was, because he sees me there in Nigeria, so he's assuming that I was there. And I'm like, oh really? So tell me, what about African American girls that you African men, you guys love so much, but that you can't take home to mom or something like that?
It's the reverse now, I would say. Between us, it's like girls are like, man, I'm not messing with no more Africans. I'm only going to like whites and Asians. And then guys, really? African guys are like, I'm not messing with no more African. So it's like reverse now from relationship standpoint, because it's like, Yoruba demons and like African men. Facts. Like Africans don't want to mess with Africans no more.
I've never really actually dated an African guy before.
By choice?
Not by choice. It just never happened. Never happened, and then like it just never. You exude the
Akata side more.
I guess so. Do I? When you say exude what does that mean? That's my question. Like, what does?
Have you heard your podcast?
Yeah, I've heard my podcast, but what does that mean?
It's like, the Akata side that comes out more.
But you say Akata side, but this is a bad thing.
Let me put it. No, it's not a bad thing. The issue here is you guys are very unapologetic with how you carry yourself, and that attitude, has, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, has kind of moved on to all women at large, because when it comes to like, and this is still my opinion, when it comes to like the Me Too movements, the women's rights and all that, feminism and all that, what I mean, like it's mostly the African Americans who are like very strong with it. Our women were thought to just sit back, lay back, and just let things happen, watch things happen. But since they moved here and all that, now it's to gain their voice, and they talk more and more and more. So.
But would you think that that's because African women actually experience those things?
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, definitely.
African women experience things that go on related to the Me Too movement. African women experience these things, that relate to misogyny, that relate to sexism within African countries. Like it exists, it's real, and it is global.
Of course,
it's global. So it's not I wouldn't say there's much difference when it comes to African women carry themselves like this, and then African American women carry themselves like this. Whether you want to call it feminism or not, I know in my younger years, I was very, very much attached to the word feminism. I was very, very much attached to the movement of feminism. But I think we've kind of moved into, I will say me personally, I moved into more of a, what is good for me? What is right and wrong according to me, you know what I mean, and understanding myself.
So let me ask you this: what aspects of the African culture is like, all right, we gotta cut that? Or for you personally, it's like, all right, that's bad. And what aspects of the American aspects like, all right, this is bad and good? And what are you taking from each and forming yourself?
That's a true question.
Okay. that is a really good question. Let me think on that real quick. Make sure.
Being that you're stuck in the middle, it's like, I gotta focus.
Don't hold back.
No, I'm not hold back. I just want to make sure I'm very clear on what I'm saying. When I see things in the African culture, right, I will say African men, right? And let me say, not all African men, so nobody can say not all men. I'm saying not all, so you guys can see that. Not all African men, but there is a culture that is kind of like, I'm the man, and what I say goes, and that's it. Like, as a woman, they kind of have like a role that a woman has to play. Nothing's wrong with that role, but it's like, you have to have a balance. I think.
Gender roles.
Yeah, not changing gender roles. Have a balance. Be realistic with it. We don't live in that a woman can't have a job and she can't do this and that. She has to be at home with the kids. Have a balance and be supportive of your partner. I think a lot of men, African men, I wouldn't even say African men, I would just say men in general. There is a society where you guys are, lack emotion, or you very critical.
So American men are good in that regard.
No, I'm saying men in general.
Okay.
I'm saying men in general.
But then you still, I mean, we basically want you to distinguish the two. Like, one thing here, that's bad, and one thing here, that's bad, that you could, both parties could come together, and have like an understanding, like, let's move forward.
So with African and African American relations, I would say one thing is we do a lot of finger pointing between each other.
That's big.
And I talked to one of your associates earlier, before we started filming, and she had brought up the point about being called an African booty scratcher, right? Back in the day, back in the day, I was called an African booty scratcher. I was made fun of, like, the clothes I would wear, the food I would bring to eat, and there was like there's this ignorant idea of Africa. And then on the African American side, we have Africans that, you come to this country and sometimes you're told straight up, like, don't be like them, or, African Americans are lazy. There's stereotypes.
Good job, like, all right.
Yeah. you see? But that's a stereotype. That's a stereotype, and it's not
Let me ask you this. Is this a stereotype?
They're lazy.
The fact that entitlement, is that a stereotype?
What do you mean when you say entitlement? You think African Americans are entitled? Feel entitled?
Well, most people say African Americans are entitled.
I think that's not a label you can put just on African Americans, though. You can't say that just African Americans are entitled to whatever. Think that things should just be given to them.
This is going to a question that we have, so just skipping ahead. You had some, discrepancies with Yvonne Orji's comments on the Breakfast Club.
Yeah, I did.
Where she said Africans on their way to success overlook African Americans. So, what I'm saying, and just picking back over that, is like, we as Africans, we're like, oh, you want it, go get it, work hard.
But that's the same thing as African Americans, though. That's the same thing. That's the same thing that's told in African American households. My mother has never told me to be basic. My mother has always, pushed in me, even my father as well. But African American households are 100% on the same page of pushing excellence into their children and making sure that they work hard for what they believe in. Hard work, they believe in doing certain things. But in that episode, I criticized Yvonne because it came off as if, oh, I was told to win and you guys were not. And that is the that's what feeds the stereotype that you think, oh, African Americans are lazy. I'm here to tell you it's not true. It's not true. That is a that's actually a white supremacist stereotype. There's a book that I'm reading and I forgot the author's name, but it's called Stamped by I forgot the author's name and I probably will remember later on, but it's called Stamped from the United States, and he breaks down racial myths that have been created throughout history that for slaves, it kind of was one of those myths that was created to, I would say, justify slavery. The curse of Ham, or the climate myth that was started by Aristotle, where if you lived below in a certain climate, you had lesser intelligence. That's the kind of stereotypes that are put on African Americans within American history. So, we come into this country as Black immigrants and we're told stereotypes about different African Americans and we run with it and believe it. It's not always true. Yes.
Ibram Kendi.
Yes.
Ibram X. Kendi. The book is Stamped from the beginning.
Yeah, Stamped from the beginning. If you're ever a history buff, I love history. It's a great resource to just understand, if you want to understand how African Americans were shaped, their stereotypes were shaped in this country.
Dumb moment. Who was Yvonne Orji again?
She's from Insecure, the HBO show, and she also have the Jesus and Jollof podcast.
Yes,
okay. She's just an African, Nigerian girl out here popping, doing her thing.
Popping, what sis is on it? She actually just did Malik Till's My Retreat. She looked beautiful, gorgeous. I think she's an amazing role model, a beautiful Christian woman. I love her message and her platform, but I do think that she was a little dense in her comments on the Breakfast Club. I think, and in I don't want to be offensive, but I do think that Africans sometimes can be a little bit insensitive and, like I said, a little,
It's tough love, man.
Not tough love, but I think you guys can be a little ignorant. And I know but I think
I got tough skin too.
No, but when I say ignorant, I just mean lack of knowledge. You know what I mean? Like lack of interest in the actual history of African Americans here.
Yeah. We kind of have to what you move here.
Yeah.
They have interest in our history.
And vice versa.
And I understand. And then there's also a lack of true wanting to really connect with African history.
Hold up. Now you vexed me.
I vexed you.
Speaking of ignorant, right? Why is it that an African American, they cry so much about racism, right? And then they're gonna turn around and hate on me like I'm pink or yellow or something. Like, dude, dumb. Last time I checked, with the same color. Yeah. Why the hell are you?
Cop pull me over.
You know what I mean? Like, what the hell?
Like I said, I think.
Now that's ignorant.
Yes, there's a level of ignorance on both sides. This is what I'm saying.
People listen on audio. The man is crying.
Yeah, he's like looking at me with red eye. No, I agree in that sense. But like I said, when we talk about being stuck in the middle, there's a middle ground where there's problems on both sides. You asked me a question earlier where's the issue on African American sides, where's the issue on African sides. You guys, we both are looking at each other, looking at the problem, and not necessarily looking at the upper hand. There's a term called the unseen hand of white supremacy, because we can talk about racism here in America, but we can talk about colonialism in Africa too. Your own country, Cameroon, was colonized by the French. Nigeria colonized by the English. So we all are touched by white supremacy in a way that they have dropped ideas in your head about how African Americans can act, and then white supremacy in America has dropped ideas in our head about how Africans should act. I grew up thinking, oh, Africans are all dirty. Hearing all the jokes, Africans are dirty. Africans smell bad. You go off the plane, you want to catch AIDS. You all walk around with spears. Oh, we're, is there lions? I remember I came back from Nigeria and I was asked, oh, did you see lions? I mean, I did because I went on safari, but
I ain't seen. I have yet to see a lion.
I saw them in an actual zoo, like it would here, but that
my coworker used to ask me that. I just looked at him, just like, have you seen a lion?
So it's on both sides, but I always have to remember that white supremacy has touched all of us. So when you say, oh, why African Americans are so gunged up on racism, you guys are gunned up on racism too. You may not have the same acknowledgement, but we were just as colonized. We were just as touched by it. As
I'm not denying that. At the end of the day, we all black. You know what I mean? Like if I get pulled over, the cops are like, "Oh, are you African?" It's not on my driver's license that you're African. You know what I mean? Like we face the same thing.
We all getting shot.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Don't call me saying, "Oh, but you're African."
Go for beat.
Like, dude, what does that even mean?
I will say, like I said,
don't shoot me.
I think, like I said, I think the contention comes from these beliefs that we both hold about each other. Africans hold beliefs about African Americans that are negative, and African Americans hold beliefs about Africans. A lot of my friends will say, Africans, they come off very haughty. They come off like they're better than everybody. They come off like, oh, African Americans are lowly, etc., etc.
I tell you, these Africans, we dress better.
Look, I tell you this. Matter of fact, hold on. I tell you this. I know myself. Okay. You know what I mean? And when I put on my self-confidence and I step out, it's not my problem that you don't got. It's not my fault you don't got self-confidence. You know what I mean?
I 100%
go find yours. I found mine. Find your own.
I'm not saying that African Americans are all like, I'm saying that we're talking about societal stereotypes that we believe in. Not just personal. Somebody can have a personal issue with an African because that's their own personal issue. They had one anecdotal experience with the African, and then that's how they look at Africa.
They had Ghanaian jollof.
Yeah. Nigerian jollof is the only one that we should be talking about.
What's
that face?
My only issue I have right now is the fact that you try to talk like sports, for example, right? When you say soccer, they all look at you sideways like,
it's football.
Like, what the heck are you talking about? I'm like, all you know is football and basketball. And you go, why didn't even call it soccer, man? Like that's not even a good sport. I'm like, bruh, you ever played soccer before? Nah, go run for 90 minutes and then come back and
let's have a conversation. Than any sport in the world.
You know what I mean?
But let's put a pin on it. You know what I'm saying? Talk a little bit about National Black
United Front. Yeah.
National Black United Front. You are the vice chair.
Vice chair.
How long have you been a vice chair?
I actually have been just about a little over a year.
Okay. What is a National Black United Front?
Well, the National Black United Front is an organization that it was created by four gentlemen, Reverend.
Sorry, I just wanted them to hear you.
Yeah. So the National Black United Front is an organization that is all about the mission of uniting different African and African American people, no matter what your religion is, no matter what your political stance is. It's about uniting us on a Black liberational front, having a united front and putting in the work, that our ancestors, that we march forward and, just make sure that we're on top of everything.
How long has it been in existence?
We're coming up on July. We'll be celebrating our 40th anniversary.
40th.
Man.
Yeah, our 40th anniversary. So we're gonna have
like a march involved.
No, we're gonna have an anniversary convention, and that link will also be in on the Akata Girl Instagram if you're interested in attending. But we'll just have a beautiful reception, just reviewing the stuff that we've done throughout the years, the work that has been put in. We're gonna have some of the founders in the building, so it's just gonna be a time to celebrate the work that we've done and the work that we continue to do.
What are some of the works you've done and works you plan on doing?
Well, I sit on the board with the National Black United Front, the DC chapter, and several programs that we put on. Like every month we do a Feed the Hood program, which is actually occurring today. But the next one will be in June, most likely at the either Berry Farms or PD Green. But that information will be coming out next month. We collect over about 250 homeless care packages and disperse that throughout the Southeast DC area. We also have our Njoya Wisu after school program where we teach young kids in the Southeast DC area about STEM related programming or STEM related topics and just after school help in general. And then we also have our cleanup neighborhood. We have an adopt a block. We also have our Sankofa study circle, which is every Thursday. Sankofa study circle, where that really is just embracing that knowledge of self. We have like either a book or a theme every month where we just, educate the people and, talk about things that's going on within the Black community, because that's just really where it's at.
There's two things you mentioned that really stands out. One was like feeding the homeless and STEM. When it comes to like feeding the homeless or clothing the homeless and stuff, we have a lot of different non-profits that also doing the same thing.
Shout out Distant Relatives.
Distant Relatives.
You guys have a lot of charities that come on here.
Reach Aqua, B1 or whatnot. Being that the Black too, and they're all about the Black movements. I mean, is that do you guys wait for them to reach out to? First off, do you guys have a program to partner with these different nonprofits?
Well, 100%. We definitely are all about collaboration. We work with several different fraternities and sororities within the DC area. The National Society of Black Engineers has been a really big help. The Black Millennials for Flint. I know my CEO, the CEO that I'm actually, she's one of my great mentors. I love her. We've worked together on certain events. We just recently had our Black Power Women's Conference.
March 30th.
Back in March. That was definitely my first time really organizing something on that level, and it was a great experience because you just knew you were passing on good information or making good information accessible to communities like the Southeast DC or just east of the river in general.
People hear a lot about Southeast and they're like, Southeast,
pull up to Southeast, man. It's culture.
Stuff like that.
Don't mute DC campaign going on right now.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared of it. Honestly, it's like I'm not scared of anywhere that has Black people. Like I feel 100% the most comfortable around Black people, whether African or African Americans. I don't care what neighborhood, city it is. It's kind of like I feel safer, or not necessarily. I wouldn't say safer. I just feel
home.
Yeah, I feel home. I feel good.
Have you ever been robbed?
No.
Okay. Please don't get robbed. So you involved with Black Millennials of Flint a little bit.
Yes.
Speak about the effort, to bring clean water to cities that are still plagued with, lead contaminated water. To this day.
Yeah, to this day. To this day. We just recently, Jaden Smith, he came out to Flint with the Water Box Project, which was
shout out to Icon Jaden.
Yes, he definitely, his parents raised him right, and it's just an ongoing issue. Just recently, we were talking about how the CDC has yet to increase the age limit or increase the testing limits for lead. As you know, with lead, they're counting it as only at 0.10 milligrams, but really you can see major effects at 0.5. So that limit needs to be tested as well. A couple months ago, we had our lead prevention day, where we actually went out into Baltimore City and canvassed the area, just asking the community there, do you know what your options are? Do you know what to ask your tenant? Are you aware that, this area is condemned for lead? In Baltimore, it just has a long history with lead poisoning within the city. It's not just Flint. Areas in Detroit, areas in Chicago, areas in Memphis, areas right here in DC. It's a serious environmental justice issue that particularly affects Black and brown people, just period. It's just environmental racism, period. It's not, if lead is entirely preventable. It's entirely preventable. And there is a study going on in Morgan State that is, about, treating the soil and trying to prevent more lead being spread or to eradicate lead poisoning. But on a governmental level, it's still a mess. It's still a mess, and it's still a problem. And that's why I'm grateful for organizations like Black Millennials for Flint and women like Latricia and Michelle.
Shout out Latricia. She's been on the pod. Go check out the episode.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely check her out. And also check us out on BET. We just aired, we were part
of
BET.
doing
it. Yeah, we were on BET.
My sister, bring the money.
We have a docu-series. It's called Finding Justice, produced by The Rock. It's on BET. It's on demand.
Johnson?
Yeah, by Dwayne Johnson. It's on BET on demand, and we are there, and we just
Shout out $7 Productions.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So, would you drink spring water? And I'm not talking about
bottled water.
I'm talking about spring water that's flowing. If they told you it was clean.
If they told me it was clean, if they tested it and I knew it was clean, then yeah, I would. But
if I was desperate, I would.
Yeah, I wouldn't try my luck.
Look, I'm going back to that African American mentality.
Mm-hmm.
See, if that was me, I would drink it. Why? Because I grew up to that. I have no problem.
But here's the thing. I'm also. So my father's village.
Cause I gotta look at me like
you know you've been here for years. And your body is now immune to this.
But understand.
It's okay. We'll drink it.
But understand that, like, I understand that history and that connection because my father's village is Abukum Waterfalls. It's
Say it again?
Abukum Waterfalls in Cross River State.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know Yoruba.
No, I'm not Yoruba.
There are more Nigerians out there than Yoruba.
Efik or Ajagam. That's our native language, Ajagam. My grandfather who passed about 5 years ago. It's a blessing to be connected to that kind of culture. So I 100% understand that whole, like, I'm connected and you're not connected. Mm-hmm. But trust and believe, even as I stand as an Akata, I'm very much connected to Nigeria. Just this past New Year's, I was in Nigeria. I was able to go down to the waterfalls. And it's such a beautiful experience to connect to something that my father was able to,
mm-hmm.
my father stood there. Mm-hmm. My brother stood there. My grandfather stood there. So I 100% understand that, have that feeling of, I'm Nigerian, but sometimes in this culture, I feel like I have to defend that because I'm stuck in the middle. I'm not always seen as African. I'm not always seen as fully African American. Mm-hmm. But I relate to both sides as, yes, you was drink from the spring water because that's where you grew up. That's your home. But then I might not, because I also understand that people don't always treat our home right. And that comes from colonization.
Mm-hmm. She put a stamp on it.
Before close, this episode, is there anything you want the people to know that we haven't touched on?
Yeah.
What I want the people to know.
She pulled out the accent.
What I want the people to know. Okay, no. No, one of the things that I want people to know that we should see each other. That's really the driving force behind Akata Girl podcast. I know people, when I posted the episode about Yvonne, people were like, oh, you call yourself Akata, what do you expect? But it's like, I want people to see each other, especially between African and African American women. I think that we can learn a lot from each other. Mm-hmm. I think that we can connect with each other, because I think women right now, this is the year of the woman, I see so many female entrepreneurs,
doing their thing.
Women who are just doing their thing. African women in tech, African American women in corporate center, African American women just killing it, organizing, and doing their thing. And I think on a level, when we talk about Black liberation in general, and the organization that I'm with, the National Black United Front, being that uniter. And that's really what I want us to focus on. Like, it doesn't have to be, cause this and that. It's, I see you, you see me, we're on the same mental playing field.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, man. When do you graduate?
I graduate May 23rd.
From where? University
of Baltimore. I'm beginning my master's in nonprofit management.
Is there jollof involved at the cookout?
Oh, it's definitely jollof.
Hey, listen.
It's mamon. It's stew fish.
Let me take mimosas. Yeah. How can people get connected with you and find out about the podcast and all?
Definitely. So if you want to follow my podcast, it's Akata Girl the Podcast, and that is going to be on my Instagram. My personal Instagram is @Akata Girl. That's @Akata Girl GRL _. If you're interested in knowing more about the National Black United Front and what we have been going on, if you want to collaborate with us, please reach out to us at Black United Front on Instagram, and drop my email address. It's going to be economicdevelopment @blackunitedfront.net.
Just do thing.
So yeah. Definitely looking to collaborate. We're expecting vendors, so we definitely want to connect with you, and thank you guys so much for this platform to connect with people who are like-minded and about uniting us as people. I appreciate it.
The pleasure is ours.
Yeah.
My Kata sister. So
yeah.
Hey, listen, if you enjoyed this conversation, it's been electric. It can continue in the comment section. Share it. You know what I'm saying? We want these conversations to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you for coming through and kicking it with us.
Thank you guys so much.
Yes,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, just a couple things I want to let people know. Blog, is going on right now. a series started by AK. It has morphed into a thing of its own. You know, you got the celibacy people, you know what I'm saying, voicing their thing. And then you got the no limit people, you know what I'm saying, just coming out.
Too, yeah.
Coming out now.
Limit.
Okay. She would have no limits. But listen, it's we're bringing it live, you know what I'm saying? We're thinking sometime in July, so stay tuned for that. We want you to come out and let's have the conversation live, because a lot of people is like, yo, I don't like that side, what that's saying, you know. So we will talk about it. You know, details are gonna come out soon. You can come out and let's have the conversation live. And also next week we're having the traveling Coco girls. They're gonna come kick it with us. They're a collective of girls who, you know what I'm saying, just get together and travel and have fun. And we're gonna, you know, connect with them. So that's coming up March. This is May, right? May 19th. Yeah,
definitely. Oh, and go read our Mother's Day blog, which will, you know, go live later today.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, it's a very beautiful piece written by Ali.
Ali Mufar.
Ali's always, you know, writing some stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
man.
shout out to Ali Ma, Valan, Achiri Ma.
And that's my uncle's name, Achari.
Achiri. Yeah, no, Akata, Nigeria somewhere.
Achari.
And everybody who's contributed to, you know, to the blog post this far, man, it's been great. It's been swell, you know, a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, man.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with Perfect Office Solutions, providing affordable, professional, and flexible private office spaces starting at just $4.99. Yeah, man. Use promo code SitM Podcast to get 10% off your monthly lease. Again, what?
I'm just trying to imagine.
Again, the promo code is SitM Podcast to get 10% off your monthly lease. Hey, review the show, review and comment,
like, screenshot, share.
subscribe.
We got subscribe in the building.
Subscribe. You know, to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, man.
Social media link handle is SitM Podcast. We're stuck with the podcast,
and we out.
Yes, sir.